Good evening, and welcome to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, the live stream podcast. I really hope you guys are doing well tonight. We have a really good show tonight. I'm excited. We are kicking back off the new year, 2022, with a couple of different guests and a couple of different topics that we are going to be talking about tonight. The topic for tonight is going to be Brilliant Jerks to Inspiring Leaders with Dr. Katrina Burrus. I'm excited to talk to her tonight. I'm excited for you guys to hear what it is that we are going to be discussing, this idea of being a brilliant jerk. What does that really mean, right? When we were discussing kind of the topic initially, her and I said, I think I was a brilliant jerk kind of in my earlier career. And I think she diagnosed me really quick when I was a younger leader. So I'm excited to talk to Dr. Burrus tonight. So just a quick introduction, and I'll let her do her own as well, but I'm going to just read some stuff real quick. So Dr. Katrina Burrus, she's CEO and founder of Excellent Executive Coaching LLC. It's also known for fast-tracking leaders to the C-suite. Clients often comment that working with Katrina enlightens leaders to empower coworkers to walk the extra mile. Dr. Burrus has over 18 years of experience as the first master certified coach and founding board member from the ICF International Coaching Federation in Switzerland. She's a keynote speaker and published Managing Brilliant Jerks. We're going to be talking about that tonight, and Global Leadership, a body of work used by, get this, Nestle, Novartis, the World Health Organization, the International Labor Organization, the United Nations, yes, the UN, and many more. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Katrina Burrus. How are you tonight?
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on the show and sharing my passion with your listeners. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So I did this nice introduction, but I really want people to know just a little bit more about who you are and what you do in your own words as well.
Well, I was interested in working with brilliant jerks because I've been an executive coach for a long time. And so I thought, well, newbies in coaching, because it's a very trendy term, so people tend to use it and sometimes abuse it. And I thought, where does an experienced coach go where newbies don't like to tread? And I thought, oh, it's brilliant jerks. These brilliant people, but are interpersonally blind, have high IIQ, but low EQ. And the other thing is, I thought, it's something that I really, really believe in is to help these people that are very bright and give them a second chance and develop their emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills
Mm,
to really change their ways. It'll reduce less suffering at the workplace, and the company keeps their brilliance. These people are good experts, so that way it resolves an issue that is really problematic,
mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
at the same time, it gives a second chance to people.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So when we were chatting prior to, not tonight but just previously, of course I had so many questions, and I appreciate you entertaining all of my questions. And we had an amazing dialogue, amazing dialogue. I was like, dude, this should be like the podcast like right now. Because it was like really good discussions. But one of the things that I started with was having you define for me what is a brilliant jerk and the value that they add, not just to the organization, but also to their team as well.
So they're brilliant. I mean, they have an expertise that the company values. They could be excellent at restructuring companies. They could be the best cardiologists and have an incredible reputation. And the hospital has been trying to court them to come over since a long time. They can be expert engineers, but have very little interpersonal skills. So they know what to do, but they don't always know how to bring it about. So that's the issue. The other thing is they're in a leadership position. Therefore, their behaviors really affect a lot of people.
Mm,
So it's an issue and a problem for companies.
I think one of the things that you just said there around that person being highly intelligent. I would hazard a guess to think that some measure of hubris kind of plays or takes part in their personality when it comes to actually leading and accepting feedback. Have you seen any of that within your coaching and any of your clients? That level of hubris that just kind of like blinds them to the fact that, hey, it's my way or the highway, or I'm just so smart that you guys can't catch up.
Yes, and I would say that really qualifies them. Or that's why I say brilliant, because they think very quickly, and a lot of issues or problem solvings are easy for them, and they
Mm.
assume because the other person can't follow them that they're stupid or lazy or whatever. So that's one of the issues, that it's difficult. The other thing you mentioned, that they don't take accountability. Yes, that's for sure. It's everybody else's problem and not theirs, because they're doing excellent work. So that is one of the first tackles thing that you need to tackle when you want to coach them,
Mm.
is to know how to approach them so that they don't get into defensive mode, because as long as it's everybody else's fault, there's no change possible.
Oh, I mean, so I've seen a lot of brilliant jerks, and like I said, I think early in my career, I probably was one, because when you start to think about getting things really quickly, I'm sort of still that way, but I think over my career path, I've learned to be able to bring other people along for the ride. But what happened, and you can maybe kind of qualify this if you will, is that there had to be something, whether it's dramatic or something that actually took place within that person's career so that they can really identify, I am a brilliant jerk, but I need to make a change, right? What's something that you've seen happen or trigger in maybe one of your clients' life, or from your studies that you've seen, whether it's just them coming to you for coaching? Because I think that's what we talked about when our discovery call. You said, well, when they come to you for coaching, it's almost like, well, either you're gonna get this through coaching, or we're gonna have to make another decision as an organization.
Yes. So usually it's the company that calls me, because
Mm-hmm.
they've identified the issue, because maybe a lot of people go to the HR, and or there's been an extreme turnover in a division. So it's caught the attention to their boss or the board members that there's a lot of turnover. People are complaining. There's maybe a mutiny that's in the making. So then top management calls, usually HR, and HR says, "Oh yes, well I know somebody that's expert in that, and will help this leader to really retain his brilliance, because has its value for the company, but it's at the same time help them to change their behaviors." So then when you come in, it's helping them. I don't, as I mentioned to you earlier, it's, I don't tell them they should be coached.
Mm.
I
Right,
just
right.
say to them, look, why do you think I'm here? What is being told to you? Because often the leader doesn't really tell them very, very clearly what's going on.
Right.
So, and plus, if you have an avoidant leader, an abrasive jerk, well, it's like nothing gets done. So it's really helping them first communicate between themselves at times,
Hmm.
or sometimes it's not necessary. It's like you said, or you change your behavior, or there'll be consequences.
How does the organization, because when in our discussion we talked about like 360 feedback and different things like that, how does the organization kind of like insulate these brilliant leaders, because you just said earlier that they add value in so many different ways, and I would hazard a guess that they don't want to lose that person, they don't want to lose that brilliance. However, they're still a jerk, and we have to kind of manage that process. How do they help kind of insulate those brilliant leaders, Because we talked about 360 feedback and things along that line as well, too.
So there's several questions and answers in your question. One,
Mhm.
they want to keep them because they have something. Otherwise, they would have been fired before I come in.
Right.
The other thing, insulating them is not really retaining the opportunity because they're leaders and they can't do everything themselves. They have to work with other people. And the other thing is often they don't develop their successors,
Mm.
or they another possibility is they have yes men around them that are followers and couldn't take the leadership position. So they create a certain amount of void around them that is a problem when if they're thinking of firing the person who's going to come up the ranks and be able to manage the situation since they're so authoritarian, a lot of them, not all, but a
Mm.
lot of authoritarian, that they create no successor. That's the biggest risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the people around them are yes people, often bright,
Right.
but that's the way to survive. Or they leave. They leave.
Mm. Well, before we go to the next question, I want to make sure I connect with everybody that's out there. Hello,
Yeah.
Samantha says hello, Steve and Katrina. Good to see you. Good
Hello.
to see you tonight. And then Mr. James Hicks, he's looking forward to this session. I appreciate you. Oh, and I like this comment. I like this one. Doctor Strange is a great fictional example of a brilliant jerk. It's Marvel, right? I think it's Marvel. The Doctor Strange, where he was a surgeon and had all of this talent, but and no one could kind of break him down. And he had to have this traumatic situation kind of happen to him. So, as well too. Um, I was writing down. One of the things that you talked about was their inability to kind of develop a successor. Is it because they feel that they may be unreplaceable, or they just don't have the actual skills to actually understand what that takes to actually develop a team or develop that successor as well?
Mhm. Yes, it's especially if the profile is authoritarian.
Mm,
They want good followers, and they want to take the attributes or the accomplishments under their, how to say, they want to. Sorry, the French is coming to me.
that's okay.
It,
You can say it in French. You can say it in French, and then we
ils
can translate it
s'attirent
later.
ils s'attirent l'attention à eux-mêmes. So that means that they draw the attention to them and their results, and they can take ideas of other people. But I got to say that in the process of change from brilliant jerks to inspiring leaders, they are brilliant. And if you bring them irrefutable data that their ways are not doing the effect that they want, and if they're high achievers, where many of them are, because they're brilliant in some area as well, they can't stand being incompetent in one area.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
by giving them irrefutable data, showing them exactly, very specifically what they do and say verbally and non-verbally that gets a perception, then they'll work towards it. But many of these tough guys or tough women are have a strong desire to achieve and be recognized. There for them, it's being recognized is very important. For example, if they don't get the office they think they should have, the corner office, or if they don't get the hotel that represents their status, they lose control.
mm,
And often, I would say these brilliant jerks lose control of their emotions and lash out to people. I think the difference between an inspiring leader and a brilliant jerk is that the brilliant jerk, when he sees that something hasn't been done, an employee comes to them with a problem and they have not succeeded. So the brilliant jerk will think, oh, that's going to reflect on me
mm,
and react aggressively.
mm,
Well, the inspiring leader, what they do is they have the same situation, same person comes to them and says, I haven't been able to do it, and I haven't succeeded. Well, the inspiring leader will say, step back, look at their leadership agility, and
mhm,
say,
mhm,
is this person incompetent to do it, or is this person not motivated to do it? So if they're not competent enough to do it, well, they'll diminish the project,
Right.
or they'll give them mentoring, or they'll send them on a training. Uh, that's what they do, because the end objective is that that person succeeds,
Right.
and they can dissociate their personality and their results from the other person's results. And the the, the inspiring leader also has the ability to quickly look and see, maybe this person is just not motivated.
Right.
His job is boring, it's too easy, or whatever. So he'll change his leadership and have a heart-to-heart discussion with them, or they'll try to change the job so that it could be more challenging,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a personal issue that's involved. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we are like they're opposite ends of the spectrum. This, it would sound that way, almost appear that way. The brilliant jerk and inspiring leader, right?
Mhm.
It would often appear that way. But is that the truth? Is it this side of the brilliant leader is way over here, and the inspiring leader is just like light years away? I think on its face we can say that, but what are your thoughts? My thought is that there has to be something inside of that brilliant leader from an inspiring standpoint, and there also has to be some brilliant jerk and still inside of that inspiring leader in order to maintain kind of their level of intelligence and execution and ability to lead. Is it that they're that far off?
No, look. Of course, I believe you can change a brilliant jerk and making him inspiring.
Agreed.
So, so, but their results up to then, when they come to me, they're it's per their aggressive alpha type of personality that has gotten them there. So
Hmm.
they don't know how to change. For example, you also mentioned the 360 degree. And there, I'm not sure that I agree that in these brilliant jerk cases, it's sufficient enough 360. I'll tell you, when you do interviews and you get somebody that says, "Oh, um, my boss doesn't communicate well," and they have a 360 has a scale from 1 to 5, and they'll say, "Is she a poor communicator?" It'll be 1 or 2, or "She's a fantastic communicator," will be 5. They're evaluated according to a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, but they don't know exactly what they do or say that demonstrate that. Now you'll say, "Oh, no, 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 that's not true," because a 360 has comments. So in the comments, they can know. Uh,
That's funny.
okay, so that's true to some degree, but there's
Right.
two problems with that. The first is the evident, is that if the brilliant jerk finds out by the way the sentence is written,
Mm,
"Oh, it's George that said that," because
yes.
that's what they'll say. Who's
Cor-
saying what?
correct.
And then, since I worked in a multilingual environment where there's three official languages, English, French, and Spanish, well, even if you write it in English, they'll say, "Ah, that's a Spanish construction of the phrase. That's one that did it."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. They're breaking it down. They're trying to. They're deciphering the code to figure out who's
Yeah.
talking about me.
So, as I said, in summary, it's not as confidential as it could be, and it could be dangerous. The the other reason is it doesn't go into enough detail to
Hmm.
say, okay, on a 1 to 5, they're pretty poor on communication. It's 2. So what does that mean?
Correct.
So I'll give an example of one of my cases. Is that this is a alpha woman, very bright, but she was considered a bad communicator. So I say, now, why is she a bad communicator? Oh, she doesn't express herself. Yes, but why doesn't she express herself? What does she say and do that gives that perception? And then they'll say, well, you know, Every time I ask her a question, she walks 3 steps before me already. And I ask her a question, and she looks at me like this. So you see, it gets to the verbal and the nonverbal. That's the degree
Mm.
of detail you want to get because she is bright. She'll say that, oh my God, I didn't even realize I stepped 3 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that I roll my eyes. Okay, then now she knows what to do. But this is a real case study. And then, so that's one thing is make them aware. So a lot of them are not,
Mm-hmm.
especially the nonverbal. Okay. The other thing is they're triggered. They're triggered by something. Usually, they're triggered if it touches their status, if it touches that somebody questions their competence. And I'll say that even in some ways, they're counterintuitively insecure about their competencies.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, triggered. What does that mean? This is another case. So, this fellow that's in the construction of a big company, he cannot stand that at the end of the day, the construction site is very disorganized. So he sees somebody lingering on the construction site that's on their phone. And he goes up to them, grabs the phone, throws it out, and it breaks into a million pieces. Okay. That he's uncontrolling himself. Is it it's like it's a personal threat
Mm-hmm.
to see somebody leave it in a bad state. So those are the kind of issues. What does it trigger him? What does it remind of him on beyond what is happening just that moment so that he can better control it? This leads me to another factor. So HR calls him in and says, you've broken 1,000 pieces this phone. And he'll say, no, I didn't. I just took it out of his hand and it fell down. Let's see. So the other issue you have to be very careful. You were not there. You do not, if you don't perceive the situation factually yourself, you always have to take a position like a researcher.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask the brilliant jerk, what happened? You ask the observer, what happened? Why do you think this uh, miscommunication happened? So that you get, you don't, you always take that neutral sort of research type approach.
Mm-hmm.
And which is makes it difficult because there's 2 times it makes it very difficult. One, when you call HR and they say, oh, George came in me and he is so distraught that he has eczema over his legs and he's absent and sick. Another person, Maria, she is on burnout and left the company. Uh, and then Peter, he's hasn't come back to work. Well, you hear all this, and the horrible stories,
Right.
and then you go see this leader and you say, why? Why did you do this to these people? You're not well. You're hurting people. Can you see this? And he says, well, good riddance. They were incompetent.
Mm.
Yeah. So you can't, if you weren't there, you can't. You can only come and say, look, there's rumors around here about certain behaviors you have, and it's not conducive to your career and your next promotion.
Right.
And so, uh, how would you be curious to know what are you doing to give these negative perceptions to your career?
Mm.
I could do some research work, and then you decide. You don't have to do the coaching. I know I'm being sent to you, but if you don't think it's worthwhile, we won't do it. But I'll give you the data. And if you can leave, if there's consequences to your career that you think are, dangerous enough, then I can help you.
Yeah.
You see
It,
how,
yeah, absolutely. And it seems like they're not ready to make a change until their status or their competence is questioned or brought into question. That
yeah,
is that is the trigger because they're still feeling their goal is to remain in this sense of brilliance or perceived brilliance by everybody else. And the minute that's triggered or that's questioned, now all of a sudden maybe they want to make a change. So once they've kind of you've helped them get to that point of saying, okay, you know what, I have been a brilliant jerk, I want to try to move to aspiring leader. What's like one or two steps or certain things that you've actually used to help that person transition from that brilliant jerk to the inspiring leader?
So I will answer you that,
No
but
worries. Take your
first,
time. Take your time.
first of all, I want to say that I do research work and it's only for the person I'm coaching. And I make sure that in the contract it said, and I also say it verbally, that this feedback is only for him. So can you imagine how stressful that could be, that here I'm interviewing a lot of people in the company? Um, so that's one thing that's important. And I've been tested because some people wanted that report so badly, their upper management, that they said, we won't pay you unless you give it to us. So no, don't pay me. You know.
Really, really.
Mhm.
Wow. So the company. I'll let you get to the other ones too in a second. So the company, in certain situations, right? And they were so adamant about getting that information. And I guess, and maybe even ask this question, like, to what end do they want that information, for that person? Because I know they probably brought a lot of value to to that company. Is it,
You may,
well, did you
that's
did you think about that too?
yeah, that's a fabulous question. So what sometimes they really just want to fire the person.
Mm,
To give them good conscience, they call a coach. So that's one thing the coach needs to be very aware. And in that pre-interview before the coach takes place, make sure that they're not using you to fire you.
mm,
Okay? And just having the data to have that. So, and also if they do change, what are the possibility for them to grow faster in the company? Okay, so that's very important to figure out. If they say, and also the other thing that's important to find out is how long does the company give them before they see a change in this leader?
correct.
So they said,
Correct.
well, we'll give you 6 months.
Mm,
Don't believe them. It's going to
yeah.
be, they
Yeah.
have to have results in 3 months.
It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna
Yeah,
happen, especially if it's deep rooted, right? This person has been, you know, um, placed on everybody's shoulders, for since they were probably a kid, and here they are now making all this money as well, and you expecting this person to make this shift in 6 months is, I almost think it's, I want, dare I say, irresponsible, but I know how companies think, and that's what they want. They want the results, but they still want that brilliant jerk to add some measure of value too.
yes. So what I do is if they say 6 months, I know they want to see some kind of results in 3 months.
There you go.
Okay, they got
There
to
you go.
see some kind of results, and I mentioned that to the leader. So that's those are. There was another part of your question that I forgot, but so also the once they get the feedback and the detail of the feedback, what they do wrong, they're brilliant. Huh?
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
brilliant, so they figure it out. And the other thing is, I'm very careful also to protect my client. I don't say what's your strength or I don't interview by saying what's your strength, what's your weakness. No, no,
Mm,
no, no. Why? Because I don't want to leave on the interviewee having the weakness of my client.
mm,
Mhm. But I also want them to say what's their strength because you win on your strength. You
correct.
just don't want to have your weaknesses so visible that everyone looks at that.
Correct.
It's like a tennis player that I mentioned,
Hmm. Hmm.
very good right hand, but he has a weak left hand.
Right.
So what does the other play to do
They play
to
to. Hmm.
his weaknesses? Okay, so what I recommend people to do is what are their strengths and what would make the relationship more productive?
Mm,
It
mm,
has two consequences. One, the first more productive is because uh, it would be too responsible. They're both responsible for making it more productive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second element is that the brilliant jerk will know that different people need different things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you want to clarify that because maybe the brilliant jerk reacted always in the same way in any situation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not. Who knows? But after this feedback, it's important that it's highlighted that they need to have leadership agility.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
leadership agility say, okay, this person wants, like the case I said before, it's too big for the situation. They can't handle this. They're having trouble, and what can I do to develop them? You see, they're already how they
Agreed.
develop their people. Or this person is not motivated. How am I going to shift my leadership to make them more motivated? What kind of type of conversation do I need to have? So that's another approach to the same situation, similar situation. But basically, it's also developing leadership, emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they're shifting according to the person. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is, how do I bring them up to have this leadership agility
Yeah.
and emotional intelligence? Well, first of all, I go and make them very, very self aware. Like Daniel Goldman said,
Mm.
emotional intelligence, make them self aware with a whole series of inventories, how they make decisions, what creativity, how they like to learn, and what their motivations are, what their goals are, et cetera, because there's a lot of things. But the psychometric inventories, what it helps, and if they make decisions a certain way and what's their preference of processing information, once they're aware of how they do it, then I apply it to their leadership,
Mm-hmm.
to their leader. Okay. So I said, you apply like that. So now that you've done it for yourself, for example, how would you know your boss's process? How is
Mm-hmm.
it similar and different? You see,
Mm-hmm.
so now that you're putting them in somebody else's shoes and you're giving them a way to do it. You're giving a sort of a common language with the coach and he and a format to start doing that. Usually they're pretty smart. I mean, they're really smart. So you just give them tools to do it.
Right. So before we move forward, I want to make sure I get into the comments here one more time. It's just hello, Laura. How are you? And we had I think Sherry Jones like, oh my gosh, this is so this is good to know. I think she was talking relative to I think that information that the company wanted on that client on the your coaching client. She said that was good to know that they actually kind of want that information and how to actually kind of go about that. I think that's when that comment popped up for that one. And Sherry, you can let me know if I'm right or wrong. This is valuable information. You must know what they are expecting of you and the coachee. So I think what she's talking about in the context of like the organization and then how you're actually kind of going about this too. Like, are they using you to as a tool to help fire this person, or are they actually bringing you in to actually help build this person up? I think that's a point that a lot of coaches miss, and I think the fact that you said that was just so brilliant because a lot of us who are out there, we tend to think that sometimes that the company may have the best interests, and for the employee in mind, and a lot of times they don't.
Yes. And also be careful. If they say 6 months, it might not be 6 months.
Agreed.
Really to show them some kind of transformation beforehand. The other thing is, which I'll tell the coaches, I have a triad meeting before I start the coaching.
Mm,
Well, not really before. I meet the client, the brilliant jerk first,
mhm,
and then we do these psychometric inventories or make the self awareness. Then I meet. Uh, I talk to the boss on it by themselves.
mhm,
I talk to the sponsor
mhm,
or
mhm,
HR. So I have individually these three people. Then I'll get the boss and the my client, my coachee, in a room. And if now my coachee is pretty usually emotional, so I brief him
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to, that I'll lead the situation. So the I can see to have him tempered his emotions if that's the case. Okay.
Right.
And then I might have to coach individually or help the leader prepare how he's going to talk to the coachee. Because if he's an avoidant leader,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, he's not going to be very comfortable with this situation. So the fact that I lead the conversation is reassuring for both parties. So I go to the, and I brief my brilliant jerk and say, look, this is a situation where we want to know as much about your boss as you can. It doesn't mean that you have to agree or
Right.
defend you.
Right.
On the contrary, this situation is only to get the maximum information. And so then I get the expectations of the sponsor or boss or both, if they're different people, to exactly what they expect from the coaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How will they know what they want done? What will they do to help them? That's very important
Yeah.
because,
Great.
hey, two are productive. So, yes, so he's got to do this. This is what you expect. And how are you going to help him?
Yes.
How are you, what kind of coaching will you do? And I'll try to figure out who the brilliant jerk admires because that'll make it easier.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my next question. You beat me. You beat me to it. You beat me to it because we're gonna discuss that one. But I'm gonna get to that one too. But I love what you said because that was actually going to be another question that I had too was around. So you have the coachee and they're making all of these strides, right? They're understanding, they're getting some self-awareness, emotional intelligence. They're making all these different changes, in themselves. But when they go back to work, they've made the changes, but the culture within the organization or that department may still be the same. How do you help them? And I think maybe you've kind of answered that a little bit around what's the boss going to do differently as well too. But I would often imagine that way. Hey, Dr. Katrina, I'm paying you all this money. This guy needs to be great and then still assimilate back into the culture. Have you had a situation where they've made all these changes and then the culture has just been so kind of like detrimental that they've either reverted back or maybe the opposite, that they've been actually able to excel?
Yeah. So that's a very good question because the culture of the company is also something the coaches need to be very aware of. I'm an organizational development expert. So the organization is very important because you can work on somebody individually, but then they have to go back to the organization. So there's two ways. First, do they condone brilliant jerks because of results? Because somebody does wonderful results and they accept very detrimental behavior. You need to know that. What is the company? What do they promote? What do they condone? That's a good thing. Because let's say if you're making all these changes, and you're not making it, but your client is making all these changes, and then you put them back in a sort of toxic environment, it's like having a recovering alcoholic and bringing them back to his drinking buddies in the bar. So you don't
Right.
want. So it's important while you do the interviews that you prep the people that your client is not going to have a straight line in progression, that's going to go up and down, so that they expect it and they can see it positively. For example, I'm a brilliant jerk. Ah, and I come to you, Steve. You got to do this. And what have you taken so long to do this? Okay, that's my general behavior. And then all of a sudden, I come to you, Steve, and I say, "So, Steve, how's your wife?
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
How's your dog? I don't know. Yeah, have you been doing well these days? It's awkward. They're
Hmm.
not that conflict right away. So you'll say, oh my God, what does he want from me now? He's manipulating and being
It's
nice.
yeah,
He
yeah.
wants something, you know? So we don't want that. And that's why it's important that the company knows that he's doing a leadership development program and that the people are forewarned that he's making an effort, that he's trying to improve so
Mm,
that it comes to them in an awkward fashion, they welcome it.
mm,
Because otherwise, your client's going to come back. You see, I tried it and it didn't work.
yeah.
This is useless. You're trying to make me a fuzzy wuzzy, you know? So, yeah. So, very good point you mentioned, Steve. You don't only work on the individual, you also have to be cognizant of that you're going to put that person back in a system. The coach is a catalyst.
Mm,
So they come in and out
agreed.
and the system continues without you.
Agreed. So I love you were about to go. I had to stop you. I apologize about the admiration, right? The connecting them with someone that they admire. What is the how did you because when we were talking about that in our discovery call, I was just like, that's so brilliant because I think a lot of us, when we start to think about changes, in our lives and things we want to do differently, we feel like we have to do this all our own. And we do have to do the work, but there are people that we admire that have actually kind of gone before us and maybe have done the work that we can kind of take information from. How important, and then in which part of the process do you bring that measure, if you will, into their journey to be an aspiring leader?
What what's important when you do the what do I call the co-action research feedback, which is an interview process of like 360, but with interviews, is that they put in that list people they admire. That's super important. So, because then they won't respect the feedback if they don't admire. If they just think the underlings are there or the people that are not competent, who cares about the feedback? If you say, who'd you really admire, that you would really like their feedback, how they perceive you and your excellence, and maybe what could be improved. So they integrate a big part of the people they want to interview. Now you can say, well, they'll just put people they like. No, no, no. You say to them, look, you do the people you like, you have a certain amount of control, and then I will put a few people more that you don't know who they are because we want it confidential. Otherwise, they won't tell me anything if they think. So, excuse me. So that's what it got to, they got to be is very cognizant who they admire, who they want to integrate. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, please, John Kelly, my son just walked in.
That's okay. That's okay. Tell them we said hello.
Yeah, hi. Okay. So that's important for him to respect it. You want to have people that he wants there, so he will value the feedback, and you want to integrate some people that HR thinks or your sponsor thinks they must have.
Hmm.
So it becomes confidential. That's important.
Yeah. And so when they get the feedback from the the person that they admire, how do they receive it, right? I mean, I would say, more than likely they're like, "Oh my gosh, okay, awesome," or like, "Ooh, I never thought that Katrina thought about me that way."
Well, that's an important question because they won't know who said what.
Good.
Okay, they
That's
won't
good.
know. That's but they will get enough detail that some of them just. I've had big husky guys like you, Steve, that shake when they get to the feedback. I didn't know that. I was joking. Why can't they say that? Take it as a joke or whatever. So sometimes they don't even realize that they've hurt somebody.
Mm,
The other thing that it's a very difficult process. Think that if you had, so there's two things I want to say about the control they have. Uh, they have to have a certain amount of control. It's very anxiety
Mm,
provoking
mhm, mhm.
to have you go around and interview everybody. So that's you need to keep contact with them, and
Right.
they need to have control, as much control. Like I told you in the beginning,
Mhm.
you don't want the coaching. Okay, what I can do is do some feedback and see what rumors are going around that are not conducive to your career, and then you decide. You see how I'm keeping the control in his lap. These are
Absolutely.
alpha males. They
Mhm.
don't want anyone, especially not an outsider, fuzzy wuzzy coach, to come in and tell them what to do. You see?
You're right.
Okay. So you just give them plenty of data. Plus, the other thing I wanted to tell you, Steve, is that you win by your what you excel at.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
Otherwise, he wouldn't be there or she wouldn't be there. So you need to get data, what they do really well as well, so
mhm.
that you can have strategies to leverage their strengths as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not just what would make the relationship more productive, is also where is he brilliant? Where is she really done a lot for the company? What, how is she doing well? Why is she doing well? You see, it's getting also that positive data. So, and then also saying, okay, these are the positive perceptions you give, and how can you leverage it? So we work on both sides.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not just shooting the person.
Well, I think you just raised a very key point, is because a lot of times when people hear the word coaching, or they think that at the end of this coaching, relationship, if you will, I'm going to be a completely different person, and I'm going to end up losing some of myself within this coaching process. And I think what the point that you made, which is super important, is that as the coach, you have to continue to make sure that they understand and still are dwelling in their strengths and leveraging their strengths without without losing the kind of the essence of who they are. You just may need to channel it differently, but the company still wants you to be brilliant at sales. They still want you to be brilliant at your proposals, and bringing in clients, and how you may do that. But I don't want you to lose. I want you to kind of gain some self-awareness of how to approach maybe the people that are around you. So is that something that's a fair statement when you think about it in the context of, like, when you're coaching these brilliant leaders to inspiring these brilliant jerks to inspiring leaders, you want them to retain that brilliance, but they have to kind of adjust how they actually see themselves and how they see themselves as they approach other people.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think it's you make them. There's a easy way of saying it. It's they know what to do usually,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know how to do it. That is inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting them to know what to do and how to get it to get the maximum effect.
Yeah.
So it makes them even more powerful in some ways, but in a more constructive way where they don't hurt people on the way.
Mm.
Instead, they build people. And I'll say one more thing is
Yeah.
that a CEO has to step back and see the results of the whole company. So let's say if you're working with a division head and he only thinks about his division, is competing with other division, and it's causing cross-cultural miscommunication and infighting. You still They need to step back and learn to see the overall picture of the company and do what's best. Give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
This is a brilliant jerk, but it's a woman. Okay, so she knew the company inside out, was very good at her job. She's chit chatting with a girlfriend, and they're having a great time at lunch and laughing and sharing jokes. And then somebody comes rushing in and says, "Look, there's the big boss from New York." She was responsible for all the big part of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
There's this boss from New York that's coming, and so you got to go to the meeting, both of you. So they go and they chit chat in the hallway and they come in the meeting. and they say, and so they presented a project together. So
Mm-hmm.
her friend, let's say Laura, was presenting, and my client that was, let's say, I'm making up a name,
Mm-hmm.
Julieta, but she wasn't Julieta. She was so brilliant. Everything that her friend said, she cut into little pieces. She criticized her so much so that her friend started stuttering. You see, because she lost all her means of presenting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then out of the meeting, she calls me. This was the beginning of the coaching, and she says, "I just couldn't help myself. Feel terrible. I just couldn't help myself."
Oh,
Yeah. And so we look into what caused her to be so competitive with her friend.
mm,
She wanted recognition so badly because it was the big boss. And so it's really so. What? How do you think your big boss perceived that?
correct. Correct. Correct.
Well, and why do you think that? Oh, I wanted him to know that I was smarter than her.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
And uh, what do you think what else could he have been thinking? Well, maybe I felt that I was a bit hard on her because he started defending her. Okay. So what other options or ways of doing it, to get her to think that she is brilliant. So it would have
Mm-hmm.
come out anyway, but she could have also been perceived as a people developer
Correct. Correct.
and help friends show off more of her brilliance and help her coach her right in the session. And the big boss, I mean, this is her realization. I'm just summarizing it
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Make her realize that if she wants to be promoted to the next step, she also has to promote the people,
Yeah.
and she can't do it all alone.
But they have to see the benefit in that, right? Because what she did was pretty much almost go to her default, personality of that competitive piece and kind of move that forward and just like I don't care, who I step on. But to your latter point around, well, she could have actually done something differently, with her friend to help develop her. But
That's
I
right.
think they have to see the benefit in actually doing that and how it's going to kind of enhance their status and also make sure that people know, I think that, hey, I developed Katrina, right? She didn't just get here by herself. So they almost have to see the benefit in that. Would you agree?
Yes, they need to see the benefit, and it's a skill set.
Correct.
It's not their first instinct. It's so, and remember they're triggered. So the triggered is like, if you go back in her, I'm not a psychologist, but if you go back in her history, that's that she didn't get the recognition for a long, long time in the past, and she only got recognized for what she did. So that super emphasizes that that need she had to be recognized. There's
Mm,
other reasons. So I would like to say that these people also have had experiences that make them like this.
correct.
Maybe they only feel their worthiness because they achieve results, and they're not worthy for themselves. So that's there a certain amount of suffering on their part. So I
Mm,
think that's to be empathetic towards them. That this and help them. And what's even more important is use that empathy towards them is to help them find new behaviors
mm,
that are more productive,
mm,
because what got them there is not going to help them get to the next step. And so it's really, but it did get them there. And maybe, like some immigrants that all the family have put their emphasis on this child to get them out of a situation,
mm-hmm,
uh, and very, very focused on the status and on the recognition. Well, to help them see that, be less
mm-hmm.
triggered, and also help them have new behaviors to step back. Not if you have, as I mentioned, the child. The child that doesn't get what it wants and has a tantrum, is one way of reacting. But it's stepping back, having time to think what is the outcome they want,
Mm,
what is the most strategic way of getting there, and knowing beforehand if they feel like having a tantrum, but expressing it in a better way.
excellent. Well, you kind of you've led me to the last kind of question or statement that around that empathetic, right? The having empathy. And so, dare I say, or are you saying that we, those of us around that brilliant leader, have a role to play um, in them becoming an inspiring leader? Would you say that?
Yes. And I'll say they don't know how to do it by themselves. That's
Mhm.
why I think a coach is very valuable. Yeah, okay, to pinpoint this is not right, this is not right, and that's right. Yes, but that's all they know till now. So they would need somebody. It could be somebody internally to the company, but they would need someone to show them different ways of getting what they want in a more productive way. And I think coaching could be very much a very positive effect both on the person, giving them another chance, and also on all the people that they interact with that really suffer sometimes, very much so.
Mhm.
I had an executive, not have a big multinational, and an executive is not a new leader, that called me up and said, "Look, I've been the speaker for the company because I was considered a good speaker, and they now people say I'm reacting strangely. I can't finish my sentences. I have physical reactions, eczema, and I'm not acting normally. And I hate to ask for help, but I just don't feel I'm myself anymore. And so that's the kind of
Mm.
effects and lack of confidence that it becomes physical that a brilliant juror can have on their in the sense of their victim.
Mm.
So I think it's well worth to keep, and that's what I'm very passionate about, to get these people a second chance and to reduce, hurt having them hurt people within the company.
Well, this is the last statement, and my buddy says, James says, I'm going to start calling people jerks, and I'm going to do it with a smile. Thank you, thank you, Doctor, Mr. James Hicks. What do you have? What do you have going on, Doctor Burrus? Do you have any classes or courses or anything that you have going on in the near future? I know you have a podcast. If you don't mind talking about your podcast and the one you currently have, where everybody can find that as well.
So yes, on all the different platforms, it's called Excellent Executive Leadership. Excellent Executive Leadership. And it's a weekly podcast, and it's really to help your leadership get one step closer to excelling. I interview experts in all different domains and how they can help your practice or your development. For that, I also have the book called Managing Brilliant Jerks,
Yes.
how organizations and coaches can transform difficult leaders into powerful visionary. It's a story, but it gives all the process of how to coach these people. And the other is, especially the research, is maybe probably the hardest part of this coaching process. And that I will be giving a seminar, a
Excellent.
women webinar. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we will stay tuned for that, and I will make sure everybody has all of your information where they can get the book, and also to your website, and everything else that you have going
Yeah.
on as well too. So
My,
I want to I want to thank you, so much for your time today. I knew when we had our discovery call, I knew this was actually going to be some really good content, and I think we can probably go deeper in a couple of areas as well. Um,
yes.
and we will. I think we've already kind of determined that we need to stay connected, and we're going to talk about some other things as well.
Yeah.
But the idea of being a brilliant jerk to inspiring leader, I think a lot of people are going to understand how the role that they can play in helping those individuals. Because I think in relative to leadership, it's not just about them, it's also about us, how we can help other people kind
That's
of
right.
maximize who they are. And also just, it's this idea of becoming, because we can't just become by ourselves, but we have to make sure that we're helping people along their journey as well. So Dr.
Uh,
Katrina Burrus, I
yeah.
thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Uh,
you for having me.
all right, stay in the green room for a second while I close this out.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I really believe and hope. I know you did, because I always tried my best to make sure that we're bringing value to each and every one of the people who are listening to this, whether it's now or actually on the replay. You can take segments of what we spoke about and actually apply them to your leadership, and to apply them to, if you're a coach, to your coaching career, and then come back, take some other pieces and actually layer them on. Because as we started to talk a little bit more, we were getting the coaching session of how to actually treat people, to connect with people and talk to them. So if you are a leader and you are thinking about your next level in life, you're thinking about your next stage in your career, you want to understand a little bit more how to navigate your culture within your organization so that you can advance your career. But the other piece is that, Steve, I may have some issues with my communication and I'm not sure how to articulate myself and my message correctly. I ask that you connect with us at worthyretailyou.com/now. Set up a discovery call so that we can connect and I can help you along your journey as well as a retail leader. So thank you for being here tonight. Have a great night and God bless.